There is an unwritten brotherhood in the restaurant industry, a silent code that says no matter how bad the shift gets, we all suffer together and we all protect our own. So when someone from asterisks inside asterisks, that brotherhood betrays the code to torment a helpless rookie, it awakens a very specific kind of rage. I'm a pretty calm guy, but what I watched happen to my coworker on this night pushed me to engineer the most petty, deafening, and beautiful revenge of my entire life. Back in 2015, I was a 20-something guy working my way through nursing school by waiting tables at a very popular, high-end local restaurant. We didn't do traditional advertising. The owners prided themselves strictly on word of mouth. If you were eating there, it was because someone told you it was incredible. Because of that, our service had to be flawless. I'd been there a few months and had proven myself as a heavy hitter. I was the guy management paired with the new hires to make sure they didn't drown during the dinner rush. Enter Arthur. Arthur was in his late 50s, maybe even early 60s. He had just been laid off from a long-time career and was trying his hand at serving. He was a little awkward, incredibly shy, and terrified of making mistakes. But he was a genuinely sweet guy, and I liked working with him immediately. Our story takes place on Arthur's very first night, with his own complete section. His tables were right next to mine, which made it easy for me to keep a watchful eye on him. I knew the weeds were coming. I was ready to jump in and pull him out whenever he needed. What neither of us was ready for was his first real test, a demanding round table of 6 20-somethings, dripping with attitude. They sat right in the corner booth of Arthur's section. The undisputed leader of this group was a blonde woman who immediately made it clear that she was not there to be served. She was there to be worshipped. Arthur came up to me at the service station, his hands literally shaking. He whispered, "They want some kind of wrap, but I don't think that's on our menu. The girl says we have the ingredients, and to just make it. She says the other location makes it for her all the time." Now, as a veteran server, I could have taught Arthur to stand his ground, but when a guy twice your age is having a panic attack on his first solo shift, you don't give him a lecture on assertiveness. I patted him on the shoulder and told him to ask the line cooks. If they said no, I'd go talk to the table for him. The cooks were cool with it, so Arthur got the green light. Unfortunately, that accommodation sealed his fate. The leader took that single off-menu request as a sign of absolute weakness. It became her cue to demand something asterisk every single time asterisk Arthur approached the table, and I mean every time. As soon as he brought extra napkins, she suddenly needed a side of ranch. When he brought the ranch, she needed a refill on her Diet Coke. When he brought the Coke, she needed a different fork. It was a calculated, deliberate stringing along. I watched Arthur's face drain of color as he sprinted back and forth. Seeing his sheer panic, I gave him a subtle nod and quietly started taking over his other tables. I slotted his other customers into my own rotation just so he could survive this one nightmare group. By hour 2, Arthur looked like a beaten dog. This leader was incredibly rude, rolling her eyes, snapping her fingers, and speaking to him like he was entirely stupid. She offered 0 apologies and 0 kindness. At this point, I was basically his emotional support animal. I kept pulling him into the back alley by the kitchen, reminding him to breathe, and assuring him that I wouldn't touch a single cent of the tips from the other tables I was covering for him. It broke my heart. The guy was just trying to pay his bills, and this table was treating him like absolute garbage. The restaurant finally emptied out. The group of 6 had stayed well past our section's closing time, making them the absolute last table in our half of the building. I was doing closing side work when Arthur shuffled over to me, looking utterly confused. He asked, "Hey, how do I process an employee discount? And they want to use more than one on a single ticket. Is that allowed?" I stopped wiping the counter. I stared at him. "Wait, employee?" That's when Arthur dropped the bomb. He told me that she had spent the entire meal berating him and making fun of him because, wait for it, she was a asterisk server trainer asterisk at our sister location. She had actually told Arthur he was the worst waiter she had asterisk ever asterisk seen in her life. To say I was livid would be the understatement of the century. My blood turned to absolute lava. It's one thing for a random entitled customer to be a jerk, but a fellow industry worker, a asterisk trainer asterisk, tormenting a new guy on his first night? That is the ultimate betrayal. Oh, and to top it off, she claimed there were multiple birthdays in her group, demanding free cakes for everyone at the table and insisting we come out and sing the birthday song immediately. I was ready to throw hands, but then a much darker, much sweeter idea formed in my head. I looked at Arthur and said, "Prep the cakes, but do not go out there yet. I'll handle the discount." I walked straight into the office of our front-end manager, Marcus. Marcus was an absolute legend. He fiercely protected his staff, which is a rare and beautiful thing in the restaurant world. I gave him a rapid-fire rundown of the table's antics, the psychological torture of Arthur, and the fact that this monster was a trainer at our sister location. Remember how our restaurant lived and died on its word-of-mouth reputation? Yeah. Marcus was asterisk, not asterisk, having an employee of this company acting so cruelly to a customer, let alone a co-worker. I asked him for permission to execute my plan. A slow, wicked smile spread across his face. He nodded, grabbed the employee discount numbers they had written down, and said he had a boss-to-boss phone call to make. While Marcus started dialing, I went on a recruitment mission. Because half the restaurant was already closed, there were plenty of staff members doing side work. I ran to the back line and grabbed the cooks. I grabbed the bussers. I even ran into the dish pit and pulled the dishwasher out. I gave a massive group of about 15 exhausted restaurant workers the fastest 10-second explanation of what this woman had done to Arthur. The collective anger in that kitchen was palpable. Everyone instantly understood the assignment. I went back to Arthur, who was nervously standing by a tray of 6 free birthday cakes. I patted his back. "All right, buddy," I said. "We're ready to drop the cakes." I gave Arthur the signal. He walked out first, carrying the tray, and behind him marched the single largest crowd this restaurant had ever assembled for a birthday song. 15 of us, practically a small army, emerging from the kitchen shadows and surrounding their 6-top booth in the corner. We set a free cake down in front of every single seat. The leader leaned back, a wildly self-satisfied smirk plastered across her face. She thought she had won. She thought she had successfully bullied a restaurant into submission. We all lined up around the table, putting on our widest, most psychotic customer service grins. And then we sang, and oh, did we asterisk sing asterisk. We didn't just sing, we unleashed vocal hell. Every single one of us screamed the restaurant's proprietary birthday song at the absolute top of our lungs. Remember, they were sitting in a corner booth. The acoustics of that corner acted like a giant megaphone. The sound of 15 angry restaurant workers screaming at maximum volume bounced off the walls and slammed directly into their eardrums. It was an excruciatingly long song, too. The smug smile on the leader's face evaporated in half a second. Her friends literally slapped their hands over their ears, wincing and jumping in their seats from the sheer audio onslaught. I'm pretty sure I damaged my own hearing that night, but the physical pain on their faces is a memory that still keeps me warm on cold nights. When we finally hit that last echoing note, the ringing in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. The table sat in stunned, deafened silence, completely mortified. But the show wasn't over. As the group of staff dispersed back into the kitchen, Marcus, our front-end manager, calmly strolled out to the host stand. He beckoned the leader over. She stood up, her ears still ringing, looking highly annoyed, expecting to be handed a thoroughly discounted check for her inconvenience. That is not what she got. Marcus didn't yell. He didn't even look angry. He just projected that terrifying quiet rage that only seasoned managers possess. He looked her dead in the eye and told her she wasn't getting stacked discounts. In fact, she wasn't getting her employee discount asterisk at all asterisk. Before she could even open her mouth to unleash her Karen fury, Marcus held out the restaurant's cordless phone. "It's for you," he said softly. She snatched the phone, looking confused. "Hello?" she snapped. I was standing 5 feet away. I watched the blood completely drain from her face. Marcus had called the general manager of her specific location, a man who was one step below the owner of the entire company. Marcus had given him her employee numbers and a very detailed play-by-play of how she had abused a fellow worker. Right there in front of the host stand, she started to violently sob. She was desperately stammering into the phone, making up pathetic excuses for why she shouldn't be fired. But it was too late. Her GM fired her on the spot. I don't know if she ever managed to beg for her job back days later, but I do know that she walked out of our restaurant paying full price, utterly humiliated and entirely unemployed. And Arthur, he never had to deal with a bully alone again.